Welcome back to the Film Library, a Kanopy podcast. I'm Daniel Thompson. This is my co-host, Alonso Duralde. Alonso, how's it going, sir?
Good. I am, a little terrified.
Really? A little?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, I know I'm here safe in the studio with you, but we're talking about horror today. Ooh. Horror and science fiction.
Man.
Two really fun genres. And I think that maybe don't always get the respect they deserve.
They don't. Some people just write them off as movies that are less than, and that's unfortunate. But here on the Film Library, Alonso, we do no such thing.
Absolutely.
Because Kanopy has over 30,000 titles at your disposal for no subscriber fee, no ads.
All you need is a library card.
Just a library card. That's all you need. And so every week on this show, we get to talk to somebody who gives us some insight on this genre. And we get to talk about the genre itself and some movies that we love, some movies that we found out about because of Kanopy, some movies that you may have missed. And so horror is a great genre for this because it feels like there are more horror and sci-fi, really horror particularly, movies that get churned out in the theater because they're cheap to produce and they know that they're going to get a certain demographic of people, youngsters, to show up for a scare on a Friday night. Does it seem like a lot of these movies that may be good can kind of just get lost in the shuffle?
Well, I think it's very easy for people to look at the sort of constant turnaround of horror and just maybe dismiss the entire genre out of hand. And that's a big mistake because I think some of the most exciting films being made right now are happening in the horror space. And I think that a lot of our greatest filmmakers either emerge from the world of horror or at least have touched upon it at some point in their career. And what's really cool about Kanopy's selection is that you can go all the way back to the dawn of cinema. I mean, Nosferatu is here, F.W. Murnau's silent classic, but, taking you all the way up to the modern day. And you really get a sense of the different styles of horror that there have been along the way. So, whether it's the sort of great universal horror of the 1930s, the Italian giallo films, from the 60s and 70s, more recent titles. And are you looking for vampires? Are you looking for zombies? Are you looking for werewolves? It's all here at Kanopy.
That's right. And science fiction, we can think of some massive science fiction movies that have occurred in cinema. But I think a lot of people think sci-fi is a niche, and either you're a sci-fi person or you're not. And sci-fi movies are just more accessible than I think people think they are, especially some classics that they have available on Kanopy. And boy, the list is long. As new as Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future, all the way back, as you said, to movies like Nosferatu. There are movies that you can find that really will give you that, just scratch that itch of sci-fi that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think, again, sci-fi, another one of those genres that often gets a bad rap. People think that it's like, unless you are, hardcore, Comic-Con pass holder, that you're not going to find it accessible or interesting or relevant to you. And really, science fiction is just a way to contemplate, technology and what it says about our lives now, what it might predict about our lives in the future. And I think very often, again, it is a way for filmmakers to really make salient, powerful points about life as we know it right now. And it might be tarted up with robots or spaceships or whatever, but ultimately, these are very human stories about human existence.
Yeah, and I think the crossroads of horror and sci-fi films the idea that we're trying to get across here is the idea of Kanopy in general, which is this is a place you can come if you just like popcorn movies and you think movies are your escape, and it's a place you can come if you want to dive deep in the world of cinema. And that's what horror and sci-fi does. I think it gets a bad rap, and I think there are some great cinematic treasures of horror and sci-fi that you can find really at your fingertips if you have a library card.
Absolutely. Some of the greatest films ever made fall into this category, and many of those titles are right here at Kanopy. They've got more than 30,000 films and TV shows. So whatever your preferences are, do you like a Victorian, creepy, shadowy horror movie? Do you want buckets of gore? You will find them on Kanopy from some of the greatest directors who ever lived.
And TV series too, Farscape, which is a big hit on Kanopy as well. Don't forget the TV. If you want to binge a show, Kanopy's your place as well. We always bring in an expert, Alonso, to help shine some light on a genre for us. This week we got Josh Ruben, director of the Werewolves Within, a lot of other fun titles as well. Josh is going to help us here. He's directed some funny movies, also some scary movies.
Yes. And if you watch Werewolves Within, you understand this is a guy who deeply understands genre, but also knows how to have some fun with it. And so who better to walk us through the horror and sci-fi selections here at Kanopy?
Here's the Film Library trivia question for today. This 1968 horror classic was originally planned to be an alien comedy and was George A. Romero's first feature film after working in television for 8 years. Think you know the answer? Find out after the interview. Welcome back to the Film Library Kanopy podcast. Alonso, it's horror sci-fi week. It's very exciting. And also exciting, our guest.
We are so thrilled to have with us the director of the critically acclaimed horror comedy mystery Werewolves Within. Josh Ruben is here. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me, guys.
So we're talking about genre this week, and one of the things that I think is so unique about Werewolves Within is that it is a monster movie that is also a locked room mystery, that is also a comedy, that is also a paranoid thriller. So if anybody knows genre, it would be you, because apparently you like all of them and at the same time.
I love all of them, and I'm a fan of movies that are kind of an assault on the senses. That's kind of when I started making sketches, that was what our goal was as sketch comedians. Even when I went into college humor, making thousands of videos about boobs and beer and video games, I tried to apply genre any way I could. The Coens are really good at it. Lee Winnell is leaning more into the horror side of it, but he's still got a sense of humor. Jordan Peele, obviously, Krasinski's not doing that so much, but it's interesting that these comedians are interested in these kind of multi-tiered, complex types of films. But I'm realizing, revisiting movies like Child's Play, Eric Red's Body Parts, and obviously everything like Freddy Krueger, that it wasn't just one vibe, one genre. It always had a wink of comedy, paranoid thriller, and was always hyper stylized and often on anamorphics. So coming up, just watching like everything aforementioned, all the way up through what Spielberg did and Frank Marshall with Arachnophobia, my brain just got so filled with equal satisfaction with legitimate danger and stylized fun. Probably overlapping with Monster Squad being my favorite thing of all time. Dracula calls a little girl a bitch, but kind of like, wow, that's intense.
You just said Arachnophobia, and now I can't unsee it with your movie. Like, I can't unsee Arachnophobia alongside Werewolves Within, which is such a big compliment. I mean, that should speak for itself. What's the genesis of you being a part of this property, Werewolves Within? I
did a film that went to Sundance, very small film called Scare Me. You can watch it on Shudder. It's streaming on Shudder. You can get it on iTunes. And it was a chamber piece where it was just myself and Aya Cash and Chris Redd in a room. And I was able to apply as much style as I could to two actors, essentially 3 actors talking in a room. It was a sound designer's movie and a composer's film. So the producers, our producing partners, Vanishing Angle, were invited to a test screening of Scare Me, and they thought, oh, this guy actually can do the thing. We have another chamber piece with a lot more money. Would you be interested? And when I heard that it was a video game movie, I kind of recoiled a bit, but didn't want to tell anyone because of the, reputation of video game films. And then I started reading Mishna Wolf's script, and it read like The Thing meets Arachnophobia with a touch of Tremors. And I went, no, this is everything I want to do. And as you have to do when you're pitching to direct anything, you have to just pitch the movie you want to make, because it's going to be your baby, whether you like it or not, for a year of your life. And in my case, it was a year through COVID, shooting it, wrapping the day before lockdown, and then post all the way through to close to the end of the year, right up to our Tribeca premiere. So I pitched the movie I wanted to make, which was a stylized, Spielberg oneer kind of genre bender, and they loved it. Thank God.
So, you've already rattled off a really impressive list of films that kind of, go for the sort of mix in tone. While you're working or when you're like prepping a film, obviously during is a whole other story, but when you're in that pre-production process, do you find yourself going back to movies that inspired you to sort of like look for, how do they get over this part? What's a way I can, work this situation? Or like, how do I make sure I'm not like indirectly or unwittingly copying a thing I love?
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, we're all copying and we're all regurgitating, not in an AI way, but we've been borrowing since the beginning.
Sure.
So it's okay to borrow. Everything I do has comps. I'm working on something right now that I can't say what it is, but I'll just say that Barry being a show that exists in our world where it has such it feels like a heightened version of the style that I'm kind of still crafting in my own directorial life. I can kind of point to that and go see how they do stunts in the most economical wide shot. And it kind of feels both paranoid and high intensity and also super fucking funny because of the wides played out the way that they are, the action played out in wides. So comps is everything for me. I go back to the films I've watched. I think I made the crew for that film. We looked at Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead for tone and just sort of the most economical use of camera. Fargo was big for me. Arachnophobia was huge. But the funny thing that that happened. This is very specific, and I think it's important when you're in production and you're watching stuff, kind of like the dream you had the night before, or the day you have informing the dreams that night. I was watching The Outsider, HBO's The Outsider. Stephen King's The Outsider was on HBO. And I'd watch that on the weekends. I'd binge that. Well, then I'd go back to work shooting Monday through Friday. And there was a very specific device that they used where the camera would go soft focus and the character would move back into, would walk into focus, and it would feel very kind of unusual and ethereal. And it clicked for me as a moment at the end without the spoiler where you kind of realize what the werewolf is, that would be a nice device to use. And I wouldn't have thought about it for my protagonist to walk into, for Sam Richardson. I wouldn't have thought of that if I wasn't watching stuff. So I think it's valuable even through production to keep watching what you can, although I barely have time right now in prep to watch anything more than, the diners, drive-ins, and dives for 5 minutes before I pass out.
So a couple questions there. Knowing that your movie depends a lot on timing, reveals, timing, utilizing what you have to showcase these various killings with the budget that you have. You also have a cast that's filled with comedy character actors, Sam, Milana, George. There's so many that could just carry this movie and improv their way through it. How much leeway, how much like bandwidth were you giving them on takes, knowing that you've got timing and you've got a horror movie, a mystery movie, a suspense movie here that you've got to hit marks on? How much bandwidth were they given with that script and with your direction?
You got to give everybody bandwidth because everybody needs to feel they have skin in the game and they're all geniuses. You don't need to tell them where the camera is. They know. That whole cast between them has worked with everyone from the Coens and Spielberg to the top tier producers who brought you your favorite shows on HBO. So they all they know the basics. You give them leeway, and then my job is to say that was really funny, but let's bring it down a bit, or let's do what you just did and turn it up a notch. And then let's do the whole thing slower, or let's do the whole thing faster. It then becomes about dialing everything according to your barometer, in this case, my barometer of taste. That's too much. Don't get caught trying to be funny. Don't push too much. And I assure all of my actors, because I'm an actor myself, I'm going to take care of you. I'm an actor's director. I'm going to make sure, that you are seen and get your moment to be as funny or as scary or as in between as possible. And that's what I take pride in as a filmmaker. So it's all just guidance, and it requires a lot of trust.
For sure. So you're obviously on the set, you're able to kind of gauge the level of comedy with these folks. When it comes to things like suspense and terror, is that the kind of thing that occurs more in post? I mean, is it all about kind of the way that a film is cut, or are you able to, nail down aspects of that sort of thing in the performances, in the actual shooting of the film?
There's no world in which I could ever make anything and not feel the movie in my body in prep. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm making. I don't find it when I get there. So I definitely feel those sequences of paranoia, terror, horror, whatever in my mind. It's never what you imagine when you get there, when the actors do it, and when they move through the space and they say the words and they, put on their scared face or scary face. So it then becomes about dialing all of that. So a lot of it definitely for me occurs in prep. And then I provide as many references, whatever, Jerry Goldsmith, Danny Elfman's Catwoman theme and Batman Begins, a big guiding light for me for my last film, Scare Me, with kind of the playfulness of it. I take as specific references I can when I felt chilled or I felt whatever, entertained, titillated, comedically enjoyed some moment, and say, I want it to feel like this. And then you're bringing in your vendors, your post homies to push the boulder over the hill for you, to go, oh yeah, okay, I can see where you're getting at. Let's turn it up a notch and see if we can make it all the scarier. And that's why all of us filmmakers hold our collaborators as close as possible. So
I'd love to zoom out for a second to the horror genre. We talked earlier, Alonso and I did, about how sometimes it gets a bad rap. They're cheap to make. You're going to get some sort of box office return on horror movies. And then we turn to something like what you did, which is combining several genres. And you are also, there's a very clear message in your film. Like, it's also a movie that has something for you to think about living in a community. One, I want to know how intentional that aspect of the process was for you, whether that was in the script and you just wanted to make sure to keep it there. And two, like, how important do you think that is for the genre of horror, which, you can just show up for the big scares like it's a haunted house and then check your brain at the door kind of thing. Whereas you can also push a message in horror films and have something that gives the viewer time and something to think about after they leave the theater.
Even if you don't intend to make a movie about something, it's going to be about something. Like, even Pumpkinhead is sort of commentary on the kind of, this is stupid to say, but like the dark side, toxic side of taking revenge, and something to be said about, not turning the other cheek, but society says something about society and wealth disparity. You could say sure. Anything and everything is about something. In my film, the message was there from the beginning, and we certainly turned it up with some character beats and, making sure that we cast a Rex Tillerson lookalike in the Parker character. It would be very different if that was Michael Pena. It wouldn't have worked if it was Michael Pena. It's got to be an old rich white guy. To emphasize the message of the outsider, of the other coming into a town like this with disparity and with judgment, making my protagonist a non-white minority character was very important to me because they feel extremely the outsider in this situation. It might also make the viewer think perhaps they did it because they're in this position and may want to turn up the heat on this awful town. There's messaging in everything. What I don't want to do is try and make any of what I make ham-fisted. I think it's okay to just, the kind of movie I want to put on in the movies I want to make are the movies I want to put on in the background. But even if there's a relationship at the center of it where one character doesn't listen to his partner, and there's a lesson in what happens when he doesn't listen to the partner who's constantly warning them, and he is gaslighting his partner. There's a message even in that. So I never want to be too ham-fisted about any messaging, but as far as Werewolves is concerned, yeah, that was there from the jump. And as I'm a kid who felt very much othered growing up in my small town as a, pudgy Jewish kid in a town full of folks who, in some cases used pretty awful racist language and was beaten up and, all kinds of stuff. So it felt very personal to me. In fact, we shot near the towns I grew up in for that very reason. And I think it has an effect on the everlasting nature of the film.
So, we're getting into the idea of genre here, and you are definitely between what you've seen and what you've made, your horror bona fides are locked in. I'm curious about science fiction. What did you grow up on? What are films that you look to now as being exemplary in that genre, that mean something to you, that have inspired you in any kind of visual or narrative way as a filmmaker?
I'm so glad you asked that. I'm positive I saw The Fly way too early, Cronenberg. And I'm positive I couldn't. That was one of the few things that freaked me out so bad as a kid. I couldn't finish it, of which there were very few things. I was allowed somehow to watch a lot of it. Although when I said, "Mom, this movie looks cool. He's a robot," she said, "Oh, Robocop, that looks cute." I think when he got his dick and or forearm blown off, my mom was like, maybe we turn that off. But Verhoeven and all the genre bending kind of weird world nature of that, as someone who loves comedy and loves sketch, all of the big characters in whatever it was, Central City, and Robocop being kind of the antithetical protagonist to shoot all of these characters.
I think it's Detroit, maybe?
That sounds right.
Yeah, but I couldn't remember if it was. Oh, right. No, I'm thinking of something. I guess The Flash.
Yes.
Yeah, those characters in that kind of dystopian Detroit world.
Shot in Dallas.
I love Verhoeven, and weirdly, I just revisited Body Parts, Eric Red's Body Parts with Jeff Fahey and Lindsay Duncan. Are you kidding me? It's phenomenal. And the end set piece is so insane. And I don't know why I was allowed to watch it. It was probably always on Max. But between those two and sure, Alien definitely was a thing I think we watched as a family again somehow. But I remember watching Event Horizon and that kind of changing me forever. Yeah, Clive Barker kind of vibe. I can't remember if Barker was involved in Event Horizon proper. Maybe I should know this.
I'm going to say no, but I could be wrong.
That Barker-esque tale on a spaceship was with all those beautiful set pieces, and Sam Neill, who was it's the Jurassic Park guy, but he's Mr. Spaceship Demon. Even
Welcome to Hell.
Oh, the end of Event Horizon with Sam Neill. I don't want to give anything away, but that is just etched in my brain.
Yeah, that's one of the most uncomfortable moments I've ever had in a movie theater. Just
yeah, ever. Yeah, for sure.
Phenomenal performance, and so. There were so many, and they stick with me more than anything else. I think I consider even all four Jaws movies in a way right on that line, because it kind of it's a mutant in nature that that as the movies progressed with how ridiculous the plots got, it did feel kind of that world. But yeah, I mean all of those films really stuck with me. Especially the Cronenberg and Verhoeven, all just completely ingrained in my brain. Starship Troopers came out when I was in high school, and that was a big moment. Yeah. Even the vagina bug brain sucker, whatever it was, really stuck with me. And I wanted to be Casper Van Dien for 5 minutes. So
yeah, we all did.
We all did
there. Yeah, of course. What you talked a lot about sketch comedy, and you do have a background in it, acting, directing, writing, all of that. Does that lend itself to taking on something like a horror film?
Oh yeah, because it's all timing for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the it's about the unexpected. Like knock knock, who's there? What's red and looks like a bucket? A red bucket. Oh, okay. Wow. I expected the joke to go somewhere else. That kind of gave me a giggle. Whatever it is, it's like, Robin Williams had his like favorite childhood rhyme that he would bring up. It's like, I love you in red, I love you in blue, but most of all, I love you in red. It was like something, it's just something that throws you off and makes you giggle. It's all about rhythm. And I was born with this, funny guy rhythm, and I love horror film. And so I'm still finding, I feel like, my mojo in the world, and I'm looking for, and I'm trying to create stories, write scripts that allow me to do both. And that's if I can, if there's any success to my life or whatever legacy I may have, it's like, can I make people, can I make stuff that's legitimately scary and genuinely funny? That's the goal, without getting caught trying too hard, doing a funny scream along the way. It's like, no.
Was there one sort of significant moment that kind of got you to take that leap from short form to feature filmmaking, or was feature filmmaking sort of always the goal and the shorts were a way to sort of, develop your skills along the way?
I suppose features were always the goal. I think there was a kind of crossroads in my life when I was doing a lot of commercials, like kitty litter commercials and, toilet paper and, at one moment Geico, which was nice. But it was all a lot of like 26-year-old creative directors telling me what they thought was funny in the context of horrific boards, as we call them in the commercial world. And it felt all very soul-sucking and not satisfying in the way that college humor, after some time with the kind of college humor, was not satisfying to someone who liked more irreverent humor. So I had written something that got some traction in Hollywood and yet didn't go anywhere. We had one really awesome read, one really big bite from someone. We thought we were going to make it. And it would have been way too big of a movie for a first-timer, even with someone with as much experience as I had in short form. And so it was kind of like the combo of feeling bummed about the commercial trajectory of my life and the aforementioned. I just said, I'm going to make a movie no matter what. And I'm finally going to like pull the Duplass thing and write the piece for the place. And I actually read Mark and Jay Duplass's Like Brothers. That's the book that very openly I preach, kicked my ass into gear to make Scare Me, to make my first film. And all we wanted to do was make a movie and prove that we could do something fun and weird and stylized, and that would touch all the parts of the horror-loving palette or satisfy all the parts of the genre-loving palette. And we did that. And all we wanted to make a movie. And then it's like, and then it goes to Sundance. And then it gets acquired by Shudder. And then, we were looking at a theatrical run, but COVID hit. But through COVID, we released during that Halloween season. And here's this chamber piece about two people cooped up with nowhere to go. And they can't go anywhere. And so it became quite relevant, hit kind of, on that level.
Timing.
Yeah.
Truly, yeah.
What do you have anything in the hopper coming up that we can know about at this point, or you're excited about that you can tell us?
Well, I was in a film that came out this time last year at Beyond Fest called A Wounded Fawn. And now that it's a spooky season, y'all should check it out. I play a serial killer. It's Travis Stevens's third film. I guess that would be a junior in high school, his junior film. His junior
after
effort.
your sophomore.
That's right.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. Sophomore effort and then a junior effort. A Wounded Fawn was so much fun to do, and I get to play basically like Patrick Bateman if he got his ass kicked by the Deadites. And it's so fun. If the Deadites were the Furies, like the Greek goddesses of vengeance, it's pretty fun. And I have a horror comic book out inspired by the Dead Zone and the Babadook called Darla. So that's in comic book stores now. And if it's not, you can ask to have it ordered. And that was super fun. The artist's name is Brianna Tippett. And then this project I'm on right now with some incredible actors is my return to comedy. But it does have kind of a genre bend to it, but it's not not the spooky stuff I've been chasing after. It's just like, oh yeah, especially with the recent the strike lifting and us getting an interim agreement with this new project while we wait for SAG. I thought it would be really fun to get back into, comedy roots. And so that's why I'm here in Atlanta.
We'll be on the lookout for sure. Josh Ruben, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for giving of your time. We really appreciate your insights. And just thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Great questions.
It's time to find out the answer to today's Film Library trivia question. If you guessed the 1968 movie Night of the Living Dead, you were correct. Welcome back to the Film Library Kanopy podcast. Alonso, what a fun time with Josh Ruben.
That guy knows his stuff, and look, I love movies. Can I make a movie? I cannot. But I'm always impressed by people who have this deep bench of knowledge and interest in movies and then turn that around and put it into their own work.
Passionate about it.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
No, that's always very exciting to watch. So, yeah, he rattled off a lot of the films that inspired him. And that certainly dovetails with a lot of the amazing genre offerings that you can check out at Kanopy with just a library card.
So many horror sci-fi options. Clearly, Cronenberg was an influence of Josh Ruben. Crimes of the Future, Cronenberg's newest one.
Yes, his latest
on
one.
Kanopy. Dead Ringers, Jeremy Irons. Fun time on Kanopy. Just a few of the sci-fi horror offerings that we have if you're a Cronenberg fan.
And, Josh mentioned with his first film that it was about people kind of stuck in a room, and then it had the sort of ironic coincidence that it opened during the COVID pandemic. Another film like that is A Pink Cloud, which is basically about a pink cloud that is toxic, and people have to stay inside of buildings, inside their own apartments for years. And the movie was conceived, completed before the COVID lockdown happened, and then opened during the COVID lockdown. It was eerily prescient, and it's a really effective film, and you can check it out on Kanopy.
Yeah, an OG haunted house movie or horror movie, Old Dark House.
Yes.
Is such a classic.
Yes.
And it may have slipped by for you because it was made a long time ago. But if you want a brimming example of atmosphere in a movie that was made borderline 80, 90, 100 years ago, if you want to go back that far,
from the great James Whale, the director of so many of the great Universal horror films.
Yeah, it's just a great time to be had there. That's a really good one on Kanopy for sure.
He mentioned some great sort of unforgettably cheesy 80s horror movies. Have you seen Chopping Mall? You need to see Chopping Mall.
I have not seen Chopping Mall.
It's a treat. And there's so many great recent films. Really, I think some of the most sort of challenging and provocative science fiction of recent years. Arrival is on Kanopy.
Oh, yeah.
After Yang is on Kanopy, which I think raises a lot of really fascinating questions about AI and about sort of our reliance upon different kind of software, to sort of get us through our lives. If you've never seen In Fabric, it's a movie about a killer dress. And it is super unsettling and really brilliant. And of course, Pearl, which is the middle chapter of the saga that Ty West has been giving us with Mia Goth. And
Mia Goth's a revelation. She's so great.
Man, her performance in Pearl is chef's kiss. So all of it waiting for you among the more than 30,000 films and TV shows that are available to you on Kanopy with no subscription fees and no ads.
Yeah, I also mentioned in the intro, if you want to binge, TV show Farscape is available. If you want some classics, both Metropolis and Nosferatu available.
There we go.
We've really run the gamut here at Horror Sci-Fi. It's a massive double genre. There's plenty of titles here on Kanopy. Follow Kanopy on the socials at Kanopy. Go to kanopy.com. Enter in your library card number. It's that easy. The films are going to vary by country and library, but regardless of where you are, there's going to be plenty at your fingertips that you could be watching. And then with everything you watch, there's going to be recommendations to dive deeper and deeper into that category and into that genre. You're not going to regret it. There's so many titles here. We just scratched the surface today.
Absolutely. We're so glad you joined us today. We hope you'll come back for our next episode. Until then, go watch something.